Welcome to Movie Bounce with Mike and Harry, where we'll bounce from movie to movie.
From actor, writer, director, any which way.
Hi, everybody. It's Mike here.
It's Harry.
Today it's Christmas Eve. You got those ornaments you're looking at. Hopefully, you smell some tree that you got, the pine tree, and then you basically been traveling through the area or neighborhood. You see all the Christmas lights, that Christmas spirit surrounding you, and yeah, here we are talking about Star Wars. So, now, are you feeling that? Are you feeling that Christmas energy? Are you excited for tomorrow, Harry?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's been a tough year, I think, for everyone, and it's been fun to kind of, sit back and talk about these movies. There's a lot of nostalgia. They're just fun movies to kind of talk
Escape.
about and dissect and escape and debate. And here we are. We're at the last one. We did 8 before this. We're talking about Rise of Skywalker. Another movie that debuted in December, and we definitely saw it on. It was the last movie that we saw together in theaters. So it's kind of it holds another kind of important point in our shared history.
Yeah, and I think that, as we talk about these films, you have where you come from them, and we started this with our conversation with A New Hope. Wait, man, that felt like yesterday. It was days ago. But in terms of how this trilogy, these franchises affected you since you were a kid, and me in different ways. Like we brought this up in one of our last episodes, that what speaks to you the loudest within these movies are almost the complete opposite of what speaks to me the loudest. And I'm not the biggest fan, but I just, it's interesting where you come from, where you're more of a fan than I am, but how much these movies meant to you. Because we're looking at it as like big fans and trying to see the things that really worked for us as well as the things that don't. Which brings us to the Rise of Skywalker, the film where, I think we left Last Jedi going, well, where do you take this? That's a huge challenge for the next filmmaker behind this. And they had the writer of Argo, as well as Batman versus Superman, and J.J. Abrams to pen this script. And J.J. Abrams would be directing, as opposed to Colin Trevorrow, who had been fired off the project after they saw his film, The Book of Eli. No, that's Denzel Washington's film, The Book of something. The Book of something. It was not a good film. What was your kind of expectations going into this film?
Well, we spoke about the last one, and while I will definitely say that at the end of the day, I can give it the. I can definitely, say that it is definitely a good movie. It's certainly interesting. As a Star Wars movie, it definitely gave a lot of hard work to the last movie in this trilogy. So approaching it, I was just like, how are they going? They basically needed to restart the entire story and conclude it in one movie. So I approached it very skeptically.
Well, did you really have to? I mean, like
Yep.
I said,
yeah,
I thought
you did. The Resistance was basically completely crushed down to a group of for all intents and purposes, like a group of 30. So immediately you've got that. You've defeated Snoke. He's out of the picture. So okay, so maybe Kylo Ren is the big bad
it's
guy.
exactly what I thought.
But where do you go from there? And then what do you do with Finn, with Poe, with Luke? Luke's gone, but there's a lot of loose ends, so you've got to pull them all together and then create a brand new story and then tie all the loose ends at the very end. So I just felt it was a heavy lift for old JJ when he was doing this next movie.
Well, did you see Star Trek Into Darkness?
I did not.
Well, one would say that's an easy lift because he set everything up within the first movie, but that second film that he ended up writing and directing as well, I enjoyed some moments of it, but it's just like, all right, he lifted it up, but you'd think that second one would be an easy knock out of the park, but it was a huge letdown. So I go, I do hope the best for the films that he tackles, and I think he's great when it comes to setup. It's like Spielberg. Spielberg's amazing within setup. The first hour of Jurassic Park is better than the second hour.
Right.
Building all that up. And J.J. Abrams, I think,
very
is very good with that. He does emulate Spielberg, and he does that within his films. Like, same thing with The Force Awakens. But in terms of him, if he were to do Last Jedi, and even with this, I just go, I've seen a consistency within his work. I actually didn't have much hope for this film. But I did see the final trailer to this movie that maybe it was John Williams' score, but it really worked where I go, wow, could they really, tackle this and make this really being epic? And look like they're introducing some new characters there as well, and that's the thing that worries me. But, I thought that they would take this, as you hinted at, like it was Kylo Ren, as I said last episode, going full tilt. He's the big baddie, and him really taking things to that level. And I do think that if they did go down that path, it would have been a better movie than what we ended up getting, as opposed to reintroducing the Emperor. And we're going to go on that a little bit, but I just feel like, why couldn't they go? Like, did they have to end this movie on redeeming Kylo Ren? Why couldn't they go down that different path of having him be like the Emperor, like being that ultimate? He's just so too far gone, and having the three could have been Poe, Finn, and Rey going up against him. Like, I don't get why they had to stick to the familiar. Where I feel that they sunk it. And it's unfortunate because I still, when I rewatch this film, I want to go, give me some more good things out of this, but it's always ephemeral after I watch it because not much sticks. So the trailer sticks more to me than this actual film, because in the trailer, even C-3PO says, I'm going to say one last look to my friends. You think he's going to die? And you're like, whoa, there's weight to that. But in the film, they take that all away.
I felt very offended as a Star Wars fan that they did not cohesively plan these three movies as a larger story.
But did you feel offended when Lucas, you heard all these years, he planned out a whole prequels, but then you can easily tell that doesn't seem that planned out? Did you feel as equally offended by that?
I did.
Okay, but so that's a consistent through line through these whole
trilogies. Fair enough. No, because you know what? I'm going to say Disney has shown through the Marvel movies that they know how to play the long game. We're talking about a trilogy that's supposedly supposed to have this singular story that's told across three movies, and they didn't deliver on that. And to me, I as much as I was very pleased with how they stuck to, telling a very larger story very methodically across 10 years of Marvel movies, that they could not do that with Star Wars, which I would say has a lot more reverence as a film property than Marvel, and they didn't do that. To me, that is just insanely crazy. That is completely disrespectful to the fan base, and not just Star Wars fans, moviegoers. Like, I just can't comprehend how they thought that they could just phone it in, or just kind of, it's like doing a homework assignment the night before. Like, to me, that just blows my mind.
Well, you saw Solo, right?
Those
Didn't that give you
movies,
some... No, it's not within a trilogy, right? It's not within a trilogy.
The trilogy is supposed to tell one story across three movies, and they could not do that. They did not deliver on that. They, I'm not pointing fingers, right? Rian Johnson did his best, and he made a movie that he wanted to do, and I think it's great. He had a vision, and he stuck to it. That's really cool. But, like, it's not about, like, who can do something better. It's like you're supposed to work as a team to create something.
Rian Johnson set out to make the film he wanted to make, and I would say he achieved that. J.J. Abrams set out to make the film he wanted to make with Force Awakens, and I'd say he achieved that.
Once you're all coming together to make a story, you have to work as a team.
But Lawrence Kasdan didn't do that with An Empire Strikes Back, and I know we're not talking Disney.
They did. No, those all work together. Like, Lawrence Kasdan, he definitely did what he wanted to do, but he also did it
with Aaron Kershner in Return of the Jedi.
They were all passing the baton to the next
right,
person.
Passing the baton is what they actually did here.
And I don't think that Johnson really passed the baton very easily. He cut off certain story threads, and I'm not blaming him because, again, like, what he did was very cool, and like he had an interesting vision, but he definitely left the next person holding the bag with a very difficult task.
But here I said that Colin Trevorrow, who was the person that was initially the baton was supposed to be passed to, he wrote a script that was actually pretty good based off of what Rian Johnson, on the note that he ended on.
But that movie wasn't necessarily made, right?
No, it wasn't, but the script was made. The foundation's there. The blueprint was there. And it's apparently good. Again, that's subjective, but still.
I'm not blaming any individual person. Well, then why didn't we have a movie based on that script? Like, what happened there?
The obvious thing, I think this is the thing that we can totally get, and it wouldn't be confirmed, but it just seemed a lot like Disney listening to the fans and being terrified of the fan base turning on them and giving them what they wanted.
I blame Disney. Like basically, my point is not necessarily to blame any particular person, but my animosity comes from the fact that they could not deliver a coherent storyline across three films. And
I
we're not
across two films at least, Force Awakens and Last Jedi. But here's the one where I find it like, yeah, it's a complete mess. That's it's just one. It's one, but yes, it sinks the whole ship. It does sink the whole ship. I mean, I agree.
and if you actually told me I liked each individual movie, I would not challenge you on that, but I would challenge you on the fact, well, do you think that each individual movie comes together to create one unified kind of
No,
holistic
yes. Okay,
story?
so to answer your question, I know you don't do this. You don't give ratings to movies. Like, I would give Force Awakens a B grade. I would
Okay.
give Last Jedi an A minus. I'd
Right.
give Rise of Skywalker a C minus.
Sure.
So, and when you ask me, like, do you think it all comes together? No, I think that on the note that Rise of Skywalker ends on, I think it deflates everything, all the investment I've had in Rey's character. If you include this movie. If I just end this, and I think that what I do subconsciously is as they say, canon, what's canon for you? I think this movie is so forgettable that I don't even consider it part of the Star Wars, and it's not me being an a-hole, but it's more of like it doesn't stick with me. After I watch it, I'm like, it's forgettable. I don't even think that the performance. I don't think the people are even showing up. I don't think even Adam Driver in the second half of this movie is giving it all his all as he was giving in the last few movies. So he was the best. He's in prime form in Last Jedi. So in other words, I feel like there's just two entries in this trilogy as opposed to the three. So the chapter ends at the end of Last Jedi for me.
It's very rushed. It's very. We're gonna go.
So in terms of as a whole trilogy, I'd say, yeah, you're right, it failed.
Well, yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't like this movie. While I didn't like the previous one, I can definitely appreciate the choices that were made. I think that, there are certain controversial decisions made in the movie, but I think they delivered some very interesting scenes, some really cool moments. This movie is just completely flaccid from start to finish. Now, there are certain characters that I liked introduced, but that has nothing to do with the movie itself. Like, that character, so I'm thinking, like, I was really happy, for example, to see Billy D. Williams back as
Yes, I was excited.
I love him. He's really cool. I was glad to see that.
But more screen time. I just wanted more screen time from him because, again, they do what they've done with the other characters they brought back. And it's just like, again, I would want to see this whole crew together. We just didn't get it. You wanted that energy. You wanted him and Han. I wanted him and Han to just kind of meet again. We never got that.
I would have loved to see that. The other new character that I really liked was in Star Wars, she's called, Jana. The other stormtrooper. That's Naomi Aki.
Yes.
I thought she was really cool, and I was happy that she was in there, and that was a character that I would love to see more of, and I was curious about. But again, that character has nothing to do necessarily with the movie itself. She could have been introduced in any other movie, right? So this movie doesn't necessarily deliver to me anything amazing because, again, all of these characters that we're seeing are not birthed out of the the script itself. It's just a hodgepodge of characters and settings and set pieces, and it's like I'm just running around and wait, where are we now? And oh my gosh, it was so confusing and just
if Colin Trevorrow had his movie, or even another director, could be anyone, could have been Jordan Peele making this movie, and he didn't come on board till the last minute. It would have been great. It would have been great. It's fine if they didn't connect it and he took it in a different direction and even introduced a new character that wasn't the Emperor. That would have been great. And yeah, they wouldn't have collaborated at all. It would have been their own. But they all took the ball and they ran with it. They bounced it, if you will. But that's what I would have loved that. But it's just, yes, the choices made in this movie, it seemed like to me, it was just like, oh, we're not showing Rose anymore in this movie because I guess there was some more flack. So there wasn't much followed through with that, which I would have loved to have seen more with her.
I know, and that was so disappointing because you had a really cool character.
You could have done a lot with. You could have, really, hit a home run on that.
And just completely relegated to the background. That was also disappointing because I don't know if we want to get into this in this episode, but I also expressed certain concern with fans kind of holding movies hostages.
Okay, hold on. Let's talk. Let's dive right in. If you bring it up, let's take a moment to talk about fans.
Well, what I want to say is, and I think it's important, I think fans definitely have a valuable perspective. And I think if you look at a lot of properties historically, there's been a lot of disrespect done to certain franchises, and I'm not going to, if you ask me to name which ones, I don't have any in mind. But I think we also need to be very, very suspicious.
Should we do an
of
easy?
how-
Can I give an easy example, like the Superman franchise, right? The ones from
Well,
the '70s.
let me just go through this,
Sure.
and then we can maybe backfill a franchise. In it.
Sure.
I think the companies, I'm very suspicious of their motives. They have a franchise and they want to cash in, and they don't necessarily have a respect for it
Right.
or understand what it means. They just want to make a movie or whatever it is and cash in on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally understand that, and I think fans are tired of that. Like they're tired of being taken for granted that we're going to make a Superman movie or we're going to make a Star Wars movie, and you're just going to love it, and you're going to make it like incredibly profitable. So I get that fans are kind of tired of that. But the flip side of the coin is that they get so vocal, and then I think companies have started to realize, like in the last 5 to 10 years, that like, oh well, we have to be really beholden to their opinions. None of it is sincere, right? Companies are responding to fans just to placate them and make money. And then fans have gotten a taste of like, well, people will listen to what we want to say, and we can like change the course of a creative vision. And it's really tough because there needs to be a happy medium.
I think that's very tricky to get a happy medium, because who's judging if it's a happy medium? Who's the deciding
the
fact?
thing,
Who's saying, oh, that's a happy medium right there? Because there's always going to be someone, no, that's not in my book. That's not my happy medium. You know what I mean? It's like, it is tricky because, yes, we are aware of the pendulum swinging either way. But, when you can't appease every fan. And at the same time, you can't also abuse every fan. With like I was going to give the example of like the Superman first four movies. People like the first one, love the second, then third, fourth, like all these films, the Batman, like at some point the fans have been like screwed over, right? You can't appease them every time. That is the challenge with sequels. That is the challenge with trilogies. The Matrix trilogy, for crying out loud. So there's so many examples of the fans being let down. Where are the examples that they've been satisfied every time? I don't know where that happy median is, man. I mean, it's easier said than done.
Let me say this then. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. That's the danger. If we look at it in pure objective terms, you can go out and make a movie like Parasite, and you don't have a fan base to appease.
Right.
It's brand new, and you could really succeed, or you can fall into obscurity because you're not dealing with, a well-established property. But if you want to go out and you want to make another Batman movie, you're going to at least have a certain a certain ROI on that because it's a well-recognized property. So you're dancing with the devil. Like if you agree to take that on, then you can't just take on the upside. You also have to take on all of the responsibility of what that means. So I don't have a ton of sympathy for someone who takes on a project of a well-established property because you're taking the easy road.
I think that, especially when you're bringing up established characters, that there's a huge built-in fan base. What seems consistent in the through line of what makes the films successful when they take on such a challenge is to go, all right, you understand that there are a whole bunch of the filmmakers are like, all right, we understand there's a whole bunch of fans out there looking to see Batman again or Neo from the Matrix again. You don't want to go about chasing the fans. You don't want to go about appeasing the fans. But you do want to start.
Don't make a Batman movie.
I disagree. So Nolan did it. He just goes, okay, let me start with a place that's a core, truthful place I want to start with. And I'm going to look into the material. I'm going to look into the comics. I'm going to say this might be an interesting area to explore, and explore it genuinely. Explore it, in a way that you'll take it, you'll direct it in the area you're going to go, but you're going to start from a real place of truth, where the purists will be satisfied, and you'll take it in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And because you're going to explore. That's the whole point of this art, is to explore. You can challenge that character any way you want. But at least you start from a very honest place and then work your way from there. And it doesn't have to be flawless, but that's the best place to start. If you start from a place of let's appease fans, well, then you're screwed. I think that's, and we've seen that. And also, it's also when we talk about taking the ball and running with it, like when you deal with sequels where it's like, oh, we have to pick up this chapter here. Well, now you're starting from someone else's place and going, okay, well, this last chapter I have to pick up from this, but that's not where I wanted to start it. And that's probably what the case was with J.J. Abrams in this movie. But you still had to go, okay, well, this is the ball where I'm at, but I can take this in so many different directions. I can go with, this is going to be Kylo Ren being the big bad guy, or I can introduce a new bad guy within 2 hours and cap that off. Or, you don't have too many other options, but you have your imagination. And that can create something totally new where now you've gotten fans that are listening. They've got their ears and their eyes open. But what are you going to do with it? And you got your imagination to take the lead and run with this for the next 2.5 hours of this movie. Are you going to listen to the fans on this one? Are you going to show them something new? Where you're going to expand on the fandom? And it's all going to be criticized. They're going to love and hate whatever you do. So don't go try to appease everyone.
I agree with you as a lover of cinema for the most part, and a fan of art and an advocate of creativity.
But trust in the director, trust in a filmmaker that's been abused, like many fans have been abused.
But at the same time, there are other avenues to kind of do that. And then, because you're dealing with a movie, and a movie is like, you're only getting one Star Wars movie. I don't even know if you were to average out, every 5 years, or if you were to average it out, maybe even more than that, right? Because you get a trilogy, and then, every 10 years or something. If you want to do that, then maybe do it somewhere else and then gain the acceptance of fans and then get them on board for your movie, because the movie is a different beast. Again, we say you only have one shot at it. You've got a ton of other people coming towards it. Not everybody who goes to see a Star Wars movie is someone who's like a huge Star Wars fan who knows the names of every alien in the cantina. You have people who might have watched the original Star Wars, like, oh yeah, I like that. Like, let's go and see the next one. I think you have to balance a lot of perceptions and a lot of things. So it's tough, like I see both points of view.
To your point, but here's the thing. This is December 24th, 2020. You know what happened within the past week? George Lucas came out and is still defending his prequel, like saying people don't understand it. If fans don't understand, they miss the point. This is decades later, and he's still coming to the defense of his work because of the criticism. The whole world came from his mind, Harry.
Okay, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, I have worlds in my mind, and if I put pen to paper and I showed them to you, you would probably say, this is awful. What are you showing me? Right? And we've talked about this, and what I really appreciate about your perspective is it's not that you're a huge Star Wars fan. You can appreciate a movie, and you can say it's good or it's bad. And honestly, you saw the prequels, and you didn't really like them.
I liked it. In retrospect, I like, there are elements of them that I do enjoy. I don't think as a whole,
don't backpedal. If I put a gun to your head, right?
No, I'm saying I don't enjoy them, but I'm saying I'm not completely discarding them is what I'm saying. I'm saying there are some elements of them that I really do enjoy, and I wish they were better movies so that way they can be more memorable, like other films, like The Last Jedi stands out for me, and other films.
So I'm going to take that and say they aren't really great movies. Like, you're not putting on...
No, of course not. I'm not saying that those are great movies at all. So not even good movies.
So to hear that George Lucas is defending his movies, it's like, honestly, like, just go away. Move on. Like, move on, I agree. And like, you did what you did, and you sold it. And like, every now and then, when he wants to get attention, he comes into the papers and says something really stupid, like selling Star Wars was like selling it to white slavers. Like, what are you even saying? And then you're saying like, oh, I felt bad because they didn't take my ideas. Like, you don't feel bad. You made like, what is it? Like $3 billion, $2.5 billion. Like, who's feeling sorry for you? I'm sorry to say that. Like, if I'm supposed to feel sorry for you, you would have went on and you would have made 5 other movies that had nothing to do with Star Wars, and you chose not to.
Well, the big lesson there is you can have $4 billion and still have problems like this lingering on in your mind, and you still got to deal with.
Absolutely.
But still, I think that, listen, you're right. It's a very tricky situation when you are taking on characters that have such a built-in fan base and trying to appease such an audience. I 100% agree. I, as a viewer, am up for that risk. I know that if I buy a ticket to a movie, we're continuing whatever character it is, whether it be Neo or, The Last Starfighter or any of these films, like, I could be disappointed. There's a 50-50 chance I'm going to be disappointed. I take that risk. That's fine. I'm not going to bitch about it for the rest of my life. But I'm just going to go in knowing that experience either worked on me or it didn't. I'm not going to freaking go nuts, go ape shit over a lot of things, because at the end of the day, it is just 2 hours of entertainment. So I don't know. That's just me, though. But in terms of fandom, I mean, listen, I love the fact there's something magical about fandom. I mean, the only thing I'd say about that, I'm like, please, if you hate something, let it go at some point, because you don't want to spend all your energy and stress into something like that. It's unfortunate that it happens, but I want to see you. If you hate it, I want you to see you happy. I want to see you get what you want. I'm more focused on that. But that's how I feel about fans in general, and I appreciate them. And I think it's magical.
No, you're right.
World we live in.
And honestly, like, it can be done. I don't think this last Star Wars trilogy was an impossible problem to solve. Favreau, from what I hear, I haven't watched Mandalorian yet. He completely understands Star Wars. It seems like he's really delivering something that appeases fans, that appeases new audiences. It can be done. I just feel like they completely fumbled with the last three movies. Perhaps they took for granted. Maybe there was a bit of arrogance in thinking that, well, people are going to love it no matter what. We only have to do X, Y, and Z, and perhaps there was minimal effort. I'm talking very off the cuff here. I just feel like these movies were incredibly disappointing. They had an opportunity to really do something good with it, and they made these movies in an era where there's been a lot of great ideas. There was
Well, why couldn't they give this another year? Do you think they've had another year? Like, why was everything compressed in these 2-year windows where if they just go, you know what, we're going to postpone the film another year to work on it, and that way they could have done a better job? Like, don't you think the timeline was one of the things that kind of contributed to the failure of this film?
Oh, sure. I think what ended up happening, I mean, if you were to put the screws to me, and I'm just completely talking somewhat out of my ass, but I feel like at the same time,
This whole time, Harry's been talking out of his ass,
That's
everyone.
it.
How do you feel about that? The fans of Movie Bounce are hearing it from Harry's ass to your...
if I were to deliver kind of a
Okay,
bit of a hot
okay.
take, like, it's a cynical view, but I feel like these movies are just made, like, they just wanted them out the door. They wanted to, start making that Star Wars money, right? Like, they spent $2.5-3 billion on this acquisition. They wanted those toys out. They wanted those cereals out. They wanted the movies out. And I feel like it was more based on a timetable than it was on, like, Q&A or QA, like, quality and all that stuff.
It was a chance that Kathy Kennedy took on Favreau to make The Mandalorian be as successful and regain the trust of the Star Wars fans. And that's great. I love the fact. I haven't caught up yet, but I'm ecstatic for the fact that fans love this show. And I hope that magic, I can't wait to see what's in store for me, because I will watch it because of just how consistently it's. Here's the thing. Next season, it could be run by still Favreau, obviously it will be, but what if it disappoints the fans like what Game of Thrones did? That's where I go, well, that's bound to happen. Can't expect everything to be perfect. If that does, maybe it won't. Maybe this is going to be totally the best thing. You're going to end it on the right note however many years from now, and everyone's going to be very satisfied. And we're going to take that approach that Favreau took to The Mandalorian and duplicate that as much as possible. But I still don't think he's taken the happy median, Harry. Like, it's this trust that the trust that Kathleen Kennedy has in him and his, working with Filoni and everyone else on board that team, that I just, in Favreau we trust. I don't know what to say. But it's not a happy median. And, but I'm glad that that's out there. And I'm glad that the fans are getting rewarded.
Well, I think, it'll always work if you respect the history of the property, which then leads itself to respecting the fans.
Right.
And I say that specifically, and I say that carefully, because if I actually said, if you respect the fans first, then that means, again, you're being held hostage to their expectations.
Yeah.
And you're chasing what they want, and you're never going to be able to give them something new that they might appreciate.
Right.
But
because you got to be the leader. You're the storyteller. You're leading them.
Exactly.
You're not following them. Yeah.
But if you understand the heritage and you truly respect that, and then, you're still free to pursue your artistic and creative vision. But if you know where you're coming from, then you will create a work that I think the fans will appreciate. And not everyone will like it, but I feel like they'll have a better reception to it than simply just cranking out movies for, whatever reason, X, Y, and Z, which may I would say that the episodes 7 through 9 weren't necessarily made because they wanted to make new Star Wars movies or kind of continue the tradition. They wanted to continue the tradition of merchandise
Right.
and all that stuff.
Right, introduce those new characters that we can make more money off of. Right, that's why you know, the movie that I wanted to see with The Force Awakens, by just having it be the same crew as the original trilogy, that ain't going to give birth to new action figures. They're just older action figures. I mean,
No one's
people
gonna
don't
wanna
want
buy an old
70-year-old
action
Harrison
figure.
Ford.
Right.
Right, and I get it. It's just maybe those movies, its time was in the late 80s, and they just passed, that time had passed. But yeah, okay, we get their intentions. But going back to Rise of Skywalker, we had Leia, of course. Carrie Fisher passed away before this movie was in production, but they did have some footage from her, and they did what they could with her. But her absence was definitely still felt. And then you're kicking off with the characters where we last left them off with Rey, where it just seemed like there is still a huge gap. The energy that she's bringing when we first meet her is that she's getting snarky with Poe when they meet up, and you're like, whoa, what happened since then? I'm like, all right, we'll pick up the pieces by what they're saying. And but Finn's been pretty consistent, so it's and then you kind of feel like, oh great, well at least we got a movie where all three will be together on this journey. They're together for a little bit, but it's kind of fun, but still forgettable with the stormtroopers flying. They fly now, all that. But it's a journey that I'm not totally. And here I just didn't. I feel like it was like, all right, I'm giving them their time to find their way with all these characters. At least they're all together. And then you have a few fake outs where you think that Chewbacca died, and
Right.
and then the whole movie becomes a whole bunch of fake outs. Then you think C-3PO is going to have his last chance to say hi to everyone, to talk to people, and then you get a fake out there because apparently he's gone. But then you get an introduction to Babu Frick, and that's a great introduction.
Great. I like that guy a lot.
He's great. That I love. That's one of the best things about this film. And again, he has just enough presence within this movie. I'm like, that's the right amount of screen time for that character. And then everything else that kind of follows is kind of more, it's forgettable. And I've rewatched it. Still didn't stick as much until, I'm going to be plowing through this, Harry. But, anything else you want to mention along the way within this journey? Because the Emperor is reintroduced. And then it's just the character, one of my least favorite characters within all these trilogies. And he's definitely not adding anything of much value to this film in particular, at least for me. Did he work differently for you?
No, I was really disappointed to see that because I don't like the clone as a story device because it's lazy and you can easily fall back on it. I wanted something fresh. I wanted to kind of break away from the mores of the original, trilogy.
Right. Show me something new.
Right. Okay, I get it. And I was happy, from time to time to see original characters, but exactly, show me something new. There's got to be something more going on. And you're chaining me down to this story. And, perhaps on a higher level, you can say, well, these movies are all about Skywalkers and Emperor Palpatine and all of that stuff. But I don't know. I think we've all moved past that. I think we want to see something different, and we want new stories. We want new characters, completely divorced from all that stuff.
Well, why is that so difficult to achieve? I mean, if Abrams, who's again penning the script, why couldn't they go, hey, let's give him a new villain that can be set up within one film? I mean, it takes a 5-minute introduction. We've seen that within an X-Men films. You give a heavy introduction. You use that time wisely. You integrate it with the characters that we're familiar with, and then you can show some new powers, whatever it is that we haven't seen before, but some creative ideas that you can go, oh wow, this is something that came out of left field, but now our protagonists have to deal with this, and how do you weave that into the overall storyline? I don't know. It just seems like every time they come up with these freaking villains, they got to have this huge cape or something like that. That's got to go down a similar path to what we've always seen, the Palpatine path. Where you just go back to the well and go, oh, well, we'll just bring that character back, as opposed to someone like a Darth Maul. But even Darth Maul had that whole hood and everything like that. That it was so familiar.
I guess you need a certain amount of gravitas, especially if it's
But you can establish that even within one film. Okay, granted, I'm going to give a bad example, but X-Men Apocalypse brought in what was it? Apocalypse. And even they introduced him in that film, even though it was late. But you're bringing them in, he's confronting the characters we're familiar with. And the X-Men even brought on board new characters within that film to establish.
But that's not necessarily. It's not
success.
the capstone of another story. Like, this is the last movie of a
Right.
trilogy. Your expectations are a little bit different. I know what you're saying.
Does the
and
villain
I
have to
totally
be
get it.
so embedded in all the other trilogies like they did here?
It does, because you need that closure.
But Snoke wouldn't have been that one, or
Well, if he didn't die in the second movie,
could
then
have
you might
added.
learn more about him, and then you would have this more fulfilling sense. And it's hollow, and
It
maybe
is.
you could say it's cheating, but at the same time, it's like, well, you're already agreeing to eat this McDonald's meal.
Yeah, but
and
again,
then if you didn't get your French fries, you'd be disappointed. This is not high art.
fair enough. Fair enough. It's
right?
too late to create a new villain that would be that
Right.
impactful. Even if it was Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men, it wouldn't be as impactful because, like you said, you feel like the fans would. If you introduce a new character, there has to be a real purpose for him to be there, and it's got to be justifying 9 episodes. Okay, fine. Then stick with Kylo Ren being the big villain because you at least established him over 2 episodes, and he's embedded within the Skywalker family technically. So
Right.
so then why couldn't you go off with the full tilt with him? Because you felt beholden to kind of like have him the redemption with this character. We've seen that before. Have him go the way that Vader could have gone. Staying fully evil and there's no redemption there, because he
guess
sure
they
as
wanted
hell.
to
He's not good at the end of the movie just because he's hanging out with Rey and fighting the Emperor. He killed so many freaking horrible people. He was already so far gone. Go all the way with it.
Right, I guess
don't forgive him.
They got really hung up on redeeming him, and you can't redeem him without a bigger evil above him to make him rebel against, right? Like,
Right.
if you're super evil, how do you turn around from that if there's no one eviler above you?
Right. But anyway, him taking his own direction to go down that path, I think that they did have another option. Okay, I get it. Nothing new, but not establishing a new character. But there were other options, and it's just a matter of it's the imagination of the writer, and unfortunately, in this case, it was very limited. Where would you? I mean, there's so much to cover within this movie. We don't have to go into everything because, like I said, we always talk about this on this every podcast episode. I feel like we bring it up. And I think it's always essential. It's the through line through our whole podcast is that what resonates, and not much does within this film.
I would actually say out of the 3 new sequels, there's barely anything that resonates with me, and certainly not positively. I thought choosing to bring Harrison Ford back as the ghost of Han Solo made no sense at all. It was kind of dumb.
And then you brought back Luke too, and Luke is just on a different level than when we've seen him in the last film. It's just, even Hamill's performance isn't nearly as good.
Yeah, it doesn't grab me. I watched this movie. It's funny. So you and I saw it, and then I saw it with.
By the way,
with a
we got to
friend.
cap this off. We saw it. We didn't go for a long drive to see this movie. It was a short drive.
It was a short drive.
But then you held back on giving your take on this movie for a long time, and I feel I feel like that time was really up until today. So it's been almost a little over a year till you finally unloaded on this film, because we haven't talked about this film much since we've seen it.
I was just
You're
so
giving more
tired of
today
talking
than we've
about
ever
Star
talked
Wars.
about it.
Absolutely. So immediately, I think it was the day after I saw it with my other friend, and I have to say, despite seeing it back to back, there's nothing that's super memorable. I was very disappointed with it. Nothing really resonated with me. I felt everything was very flaccid within the movie. And I just ultimately left feeling very disappointed. And my hesitation to even watch The Mandalorian today comes from this movie and this entire trilogy. It's like, I'm kind of done with Star Wars. And I almost want to teach a lesson in that, like, you can't expect me to keep coming back and salivating like a dog. Like, at some point, it's almost like I hate to say this because it's a loaded phrase, but it's almost like an abusive relationship. And like at some point, you just need to say, like, I'm walking away.
Well, some could say that right after the original trilogy. I mean, I kind of felt the same way. I'm like, why do we have to keep telling more of this story unless there's a real reason to do it? Where, like, I love that for the longest time, the original trilogy has been so precious. Like, oh, they just got 3. They hinted at there were episodes before, but that's all in our imagination.
Which is awesome. Like,
Yes.
imagine if that was that. Like, you would just imagine, like, well, what was Darth Vader like? And
Right.
that's way better than seeing what was on the screen.
We don't need that coloring book filled out, like, to a taste. We can do that on our own. And and they're gonna keep doing it because, as you heard with Disney Plus, they're gonna keep filling in, like, because we still have that gap between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, but now it's gonna be filled out. Like, a part of me doesn't want that filled out. I kind of wish they did stop, but hey, Disney owns Star Wars, so
They can do whatever they want. But you know what? Honestly, if it's as good as The Mandalorian, it could be really good.
could be. But it's very tough. I mean, it's like lightning in a bottle again. I mean, we got lucky with Mandalorian apparently. So we'll see. But like you said, when do you jump off? You jump off now, or are you gonna give Mandalorian a try and try to see how far they can take it?
Well, I'm going to probably get Disney Plus to watch WandaVision, and then I need to justify my subscription because I can't just have it for one series. So I
Right.
might watch Mandalorian then. I've heard really great things. And I've heard those opinions from people like myself who are just completely done with Star Wars and then just watched this and said, actually, this is what you wanted from Star Wars.
Right. Okay. Well, what else do you want to talk about with this movie? I feel like, I don't know. It's just disappointing. I know we've heard the actors even speak out about how they felt about these films, and everyone, I get it, it's subjective in terms of how you want the character to kind of the path that you were promised and what actually was executed. Again, this is a film where, when we talk about what really resonates over the whole trilogy as opposed to just this film, yeah, John Boyega, his character, the character I was the first character to root for within the Force Awakens is I feel like it's not, and they hint at the fact that he has the Force, he can control it, but that's not, the resolution's not satisfying. He does the best with what he's given. I mean, he's still the actor that comes to play. I feel like Adam Driver's checking out. I said that to you once we were done walking out of this film. It seemed like Adam Driver was done, a lot sooner than before this film ended. And Ray, Daisy Ridley, same thing. It just seems like, okay, I didn't buy the whole Emperor kind of that stuff going on. Didn't work. And of course, Oscar Isaac, his character, yeah, it really fumbled the ball. I wish there was a satisfying conclusion to all these characters' arcs, their journey, but it was just incredibly underwhelming. And like I said, this film just kind of doesn't register for me as much within this trilogy.
I do feel a little upset because I would love to have seen more of, Finn and Poe. I felt like those characters never had enough. Even Rey, like, she had the most screen time, and she did as best as she could with that as an actress, and she did a really good job. I just feel like they were kind of let down, I think, overall. Maybe those characters will be redeemed in a TV series or whatnot, but yeah, unfortunately, it could have. I didn't like the prequels, and I didn't necessarily like this trilogy either, but for different reasons. It's just regrettable, but what can you do? It is what it is.
You brought up something that's interesting. I didn't even think about that till now. Maybe because my head wasn't in the whole news that's been going on. But yeah, you're right. They're bringing back Obi-Wan and Darth Vader for more story to tell within their story. So that initial trilogy wasn't the end all. In our minds, we can get more from them, and maybe they will do a show with these three characters in the future. And that way there's more arc to them, and we will get a satisfying conclusion. That could be a way of rectifying this. You don't have to reboot the whole trilogy.
Right.
You just go, okay, this wasn't the best way. There was more story to tell with these characters. If that's the case, then it's great. Then this was just, it was a journey maybe not worth telling. Which is funny saying, well, the Emperor was my father. No, it's really
don't worry
telling.
about that. That's not...
Don't worry about it. That was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. You had a nightmare.
I liked all of them, and I really enjoyed my time with them. It's not that I hated the characters.
Yeah, but
I just wanted
this
to
wasn't
see more
valuable
of
time.
them.
This just wasn't valuable time.
It wasn't valuable time. So honestly, if you told me tomorrow, John Boyega signed on for a show about Finn and blah blah blah, Oscar Isaacson and Daisy Ridley, we're going to bring them all back together. That's awesome because they were all charming. They Their performances were great. I just felt like, they didn't have enough to really cut their teeth on.
Right. I want more quality time with John Boyega, Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver. Okay, maybe not because he's the villain. He's got to die at some point. But Oscar Isaac. So it's like that's what I want. I wanted to get that. You thought that was a given within this movie, but it wasn't there. But hopefully they bring him back for something on Disney Plus. Hey, I'll be there for it. You know that they'll do him justice because they got to learn from this lesson. So hopefully that's in the cards in the future. That it? Anything more we want to say about it?
I just want to, just say to those tomorrow, happy, Merry
Well,
Christmas.
I'm getting there, Harry. Don't cut me. Like, let's get the energy going. Like, do we listen?
No, come on.
Listen,
like,
listen.
What's the energy? I'm going to just pump it up like, happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for
Yes, you have to
listening.
do exactly that.
Wishing you a happy new year. We're going to be back in 2021. And who knows where we're going to bounce to. But catch us then, man.
Yeah, man, it's Christmas tomorrow. Like, let's celebrate. This is what it's all about. I couldn't follow your energy, Harry. It was just a little bit. It's a tough act to follow. But I just want to wish all the fans out there. We're new. We're new. We're going to be growing with you. Hopefully, you're around with us for 2021. It's been a great ride. This has been a specifically great ride, and hope you all have a great holiday season and a happy New Year. You guys,
Absolutely. If you're down for it, pour yourself a drink. Just relax. You earned it for sure.
and we'll be bouncing in.
Yeah, we're gonna bounce to hopefully great content in the next, in 2021, and I'm really excited. What are we gonna do for holiday season 2021?
Who knows? Who knows where we're going to bounce to next, Harry? But we'll bounce. Bounce with us. We're going to be there. Hold on. We gotta find a good way to end this. How do we end this episode, Harry?
I thought that was all really good. We could have ended at any given point.
We gotta bounce out of this some other way. I don't know how the hell we're gonna do it. Maybe we're stuck here. Maybe this episode will never end. We're just stuck in this episode, guys. Fans, we need you. We need you to help us bounce out of this episode. How are we gonna do it? Where are we gonna bounce to next, Harry?
We're gonna keep that a secret, but.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to not miss a single bounce.
We'll catch you next time, and don't forget to leave reviews on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you listen to Movie Bounce.